pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, today is Tuesday, January 13th, 2026, meeting of the Village of Washingtonville, New York Planning and Zoning Board. From motion to open this meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All right, we received a petition to amend current zoning map from AD to R10 or alternate create a planned unit development overlay. The petitioners are James and Sharon Casazza. And would they like, one of them, if present, would like to step forward, state your name and details of your petition or their representative?
Yes. Is it okay if we
Oh, that's
sit
fine.
for them? Good evening, everyone. My name is John Capello. I'm an attorney with J&G Law, and I'm here with James Casazza, one of the principals and owners of the properties in question. The Casazza family has owned the property for several generations and have approached the village on several times during the course of those decades with different development proposals for this property that one reason or another did not move forward. And James, I know, is participating in the comprehensive plan process that the village was just undergoing. This property is about 150 acres total. Not all of it is usable, but a good portion. It's one of the last vacant, centrally located properties in the village, right off of 208. James can probably explain the history of the lot better than I can, but we feel it's very conducive for development. During the process of the zoning and the comprehensive plan, the Comp Plan Committee and Village Board did discuss this particular parcel. And in the actual adopted comprehensive plan, it designates this property as within the gateway and said, since, and I'm quoting from the adopted comprehensive plan, page 23, since this area is primarily in single ownership, there is an opportunity to create a planned development for it. Later on in the comprehensive plan, it says, given the limited availability for new development, it is anticipated to occur on a few remaining farmlands or from conversion of other existing properties within the village, especially along Route 94 and 208, which may be considered underutilized. So this particular property was envisioned for a planned unit development type of zoning. When the zoning law was adopted, this property was zoned predominantly agricultural or agricultural business. I mean, it has been used for haying just for purposes of keeping a use on the property, but that's not a viable long-term use for this property in a village setting, given the surroundings of this. In addition, it was included in an overlay, which limits the height of any building in that overlay district to 10 feet, which effectively precludes any type of housing whatsoever, and at densities it really precludes the use of the property. So we had been discussing with the village board, and now that the zoning is adopted, we want to proceed. Hopefully the village will proceed with your input with implementing the planned unit development. We had provided during the comprehensive plan process, and we'll be happy to provide to this board as well some examples from other communities of what planned unit development can accomplish. We're not looking to build high-rise apartment buildings on this property. It would be really something of single-family lots akin to what exists in the village now, 8,000 square foot lots that you could put a 1,500, 2,000 square foot home that a young family could be there, maybe potentially some attached housing or accessory units for seniors or, working families. So that's the type of look, and with some spread businesses that would serve the community, but not necessarily compete with your downtown businesses, because you do want your downtown to continue to thrive, and you want the people who would live in any planned unit development here to be able to support your businesses in your downtown area. So that's really, what we're here. We're hoping to start the dialogue. We don't anticipate you just say tonight, yeah, we think it's a great idea, go adopt it, village board, but we would like to respond to any questions. Like I said, James has a decades history with the properties. So if there's any particular questions about it, we'd certainly respond to it. We do have an engineering consultant, Collier Engineering's on board if the board wanted any particulars about that, to coordinate with the village board, so that we could hopefully come up with zoning here that is something that can allow the Casazza family to make some type of return on the property that they've held for generations, while still providing some development that the village can be proud of, and that can help you really meet a goal, because housing for young families, housing for seniors, housing that is reasonably affordable is something that is a dire need for this whole region.
Before I proceed, I just want to clarify something on the record, for the record. I have some notes here that the petition refers to one of the tax lots as 121-1-1.1, and it should be, should it be 121-1-1.122?
Yeah, it was changed eventually.
It was just changed during the last tax season.
I see.
There's a solar array on the parcel, and in order to avoid confusion, the assessor has created a fictitious parcel with just a solar array on it. And that necessitated changing the lot number for both the Beringaman parcel and the Ossipek parcel.
Okay.
And that's the only reason the assessor did that. As an example, because the solar company has a pilot agreement with the village, when last March's village bill came out, it included an amount for the solar, which of course, they don't pay taxes, they're paying a pilot instead.
Right.
And so I pay the amount other than that solar amount, and apparently the checks never got cashed, and I found out in January that the last year's village bill has been re-levied on the town bill. So in order to avoid that kind of confusion, the assessor created a parcel for the solar, and that's why the lot number changed.
Okay, that's good. So, and I just wanted to make sure we were just,
Yes.
that was on the record, so we're talking about the same
Yes,
property.
and I think we did try to clarify that just through email, so we will, as we go forward, clarify the maps and make sure everything works and is consistent. Thank you for your.
Thank you.
I actually have a question regarding the application on page 11, under section E2.
Is this on
I'm sorry,
on
it's
the EAF?
E3 on page 12. My apologies.
So the EAF?
E3, page 13, of the application.
The brief description of the
12, page 12.
attributes of what,
Page, are you there? Page 12. E3.
I have E3 on page 13, if it's on the EAF. I don't know, did we fill a planning board application out? If I can approach it, I can just look and.
Oh. Let me just read it. It says, are agricultural lands existing of highly productive soils present? and it's not answered. So because it is agricultural land, I was just wondering why there isn't an answer for that.
Well, it would have been on the EAF or it was submitted at the beginning, but we can provide that information. I wasn't, it may have just been,
I'm sorry, what is, the question is, are there highly productive agricultural land?
Yeah, are agricultural lands consisting of highly productive soils present?
Well, the answer to that would be no, they're agricultural soils, but not highly productive soils. Those are classified kind of like the black dirt soils that you see over in Chester.
Okay.
Those are highly productive soils.
So the answer is no.
well, we'll double check because there, James has one, but there is a definition, class 1 or class 2, the county does classify it. It's something that is on the record and we'll look at it and provide you a response. But, you know, in that vein, you know, even if the soils are productive, they're located in an area that it would be very difficult to have a viable farming operation, you know, in that location in the village now, given the historical development patterns in the village. Your family had farmed it.
It was a dairy farm. My father-in-law and I operated a dairy farm. My father-in-law operated beginning in 1954, and we operated the dairy farm right up until 1997, when it became fiscally impossible to continue in that operation. The land was rented to a dairy farmer for a couple of years after that, and since then it's been used as cropland, either for corn or for hay. Because the land is totally within the village, it has electric service, natural gas service, water and sewer, municipal water and sewer. It's been highly attractive to developers, which is why over the years, we've been approached by various parties to develop the parcel. And it's typically within a municipal setting where you, from a planning point of view, where you want to have development, because you have the municipal services within this location. We're not developers ourselves, we don't plan to develop it, but what we're seeking to accomplish is to have the zoning permit a planned development where there can be a mix of single-family homes that would match what's existing in that area, and then also closer to the village, some type of townhouse or condominium structure that would provide workforce-type housing and would encompass a use of the land which would be compatible with the rest of the village. The plans that we had looked at previously that have been submitted to the planning board over the years were in that vein. For example, Hovnanian was going to do a senior housing complex, which would have been condominium-type homes for market value, but age-restricted. We've also been approached by parties who wanted to do single-family homes and condominiums, and we're looking for a planned development concept that would allow that type of use and be compatible with what the rest of the village looks like.
And it would also allow you to provide your medium or more reasonable density projects in the area where those services are provided and which is also walkable to the village core versus larger lots here, which will still eat up the agricultural land, but will not provide any of the housing need, which will result in the outlying agricultural lands, which is the suburban sprawl that we, you know, have witnessed in this region since the, you know, 1980s, where you have large lot cul-de-sacs going to nowhere with no real connection to the community, huge lawn areas, you know, that are kept with pesticides. So it's really not, people in their minds say less density is better for the environment, but it's actually cause more reliance on cars, cause more destruction of more land and the loss of more farmland. So by putting your development here, where there are services, you can, you know, have a condensed development. It actually will help you you protect the outlying areas that should be protected.
So we're talking about converting it to a PUD and not R10, right, residential.
Well, that, ultimately, right now, there's nothing we can do on it. So, your comprehensive plan does say this would be an area for planned unit development. So we're willing to work, hoping to work with the village board to come up with something, that is reasonable. If R10 is what you think is reasonable, it's better than what it is now, but we think that, if this is what your comp plan says and this is what you're envisioning, we can come up with something that is a little more flexible and would provide a little more flexible of a use while providing a little more protection as well than just a cookie cutter, R10
Right.
Development.
How do you think that your concept that you have fits with the comprehensive plan that's currently in place?
Well, I think, as I read the words, that your comprehensive plan designated this exact property as the area for planned unit development. So we don't have I'm not coming here, although there have been concepts prepared and we provided something to the village board to say this is the type that could look at. We're not coming in and say we want 62 single family and 112 multifamily or any numbers. I provided examples of what other similar types of villages have for planned unit development to work with the village to come together to see what you can live with and what we can live with. So I'm not here to say this concept and this type of development and this mix is going to work, but to say that the concept of having something with a mix of units, with different types of units, with different levels, and some commercial even pointed in, is what the village envisioned and what we're willing to work with the village to accomplish.
Looking at the use schedules for both the residential zoning, and the non-residential zoning, sort of like comparing R10 to AB, which it currently is, there's a lot more options under AB, such as senior housing, veteran housing, nursery, landscape, stables, like there's a variety.
How many stables in the village? I mean, there's more.
I'm just reading from the schedule.
And how many senior housing developments with a maximum height of 10 feet have you seen? I'm saying the zoning that was adopted is not a planned unit development. Your zoning has to be in compliance with your comprehensive plan. And today, it's not. AD is not planned development. It is not opportunity to create a plan development. Your adopted comprehensive plan that you just adopted envisions providing, a mix of uses and, stables and a 10-foot height limitation. It's just not based in reality that there is any use that would be permitted on this lot, so it's really gonna stay as it is until, someone comes in or, a new board there, but it's, this zoning that's in place today means nothing is gonna occur on that property.
It would be up to the village to decide what the definition of PUD is.
Yes, they directed us to come to you for guidance since it is planning and since your code requires that any petition for zoning amendment comes for you for comment and consideration. So I don't know how the village board and the planning board want to work on this together, or if you just want to give comments to them and we would go back to the village board. We're here, like I said, to seek a way to work with the village to, however you guys decide you want to proceed, that we would proceed to try to come up with something that, we could work with. And we would, I stated to the village board that we would be willing to, work with the attorneys to, I know this is not an issue for the board, but to postpone any answers on any potential litigation, so we can see if we can, like I said, come up with something that we can all live with rather than.
And when we were talking to the village board before they adopted the zoning, and they had requested information from my attorney as to what possible language could be put into a planned unit development, my attorney submitted the actual language from several other communities that have planned unit developments. And the idea was the village could pick and choose among those plans as to which items they liked and which they didn't. And at that time, Bonnie Franson, who was the planner that the village had hired, was still on board and had the opportunity to review those plans. And we were hoping that there was going to be some kind of incorporation of that into the final draft of the zoning, but it didn't occur. So it's really up to the village to, if they decide to go forward, to pick and choose among the various options in a planned unit development concept that they want to have on this land in the village. They might want a certain percentage of single-family homes versus apartments or condominiums, and the village can pick and choose that, and they can also impose reasonable limits on heights of buildings, lot sizes, et cetera, and that all can be done in a planned unit development language that would become part of the zoning. And that's basically what we asked them to do before, and what we're asking now for in this amendment that we're asking for.
Will it be, I'm looking at the solar panels that are there, and it looks like they overlap into both pieces of property,
They
both
do.
parcels. Is that considered a large scale or a small scale?
I believe it probably is a large scale.
Large scale,
but I
it's a
think-
2 kilowatt
Yeah.
project, and the language of the solar ordinance of the village allowed 2 adjacent properties to have a single unit that spanned both properties. That's part of the solar code that was adopted by the village of Washington.
And if it's been around, it's probably 2 megawatts. It's, yeah, and that was the limit for
At that time,
community
2
solar
was the
back
biggest
then.
used to be.
Now it's been lifted to 5. But if you heard at the beginning, James, it said, what the assessor has basically created is not a subdivision, but a lease parcel that is now a separate tax lot, which is why the tax numbers are skewed a little bit in the petition. So obviously that acreage that's occupied would be carved out of the, could still be part of the PUD zone, but it would, that acreage would not be used for calculation of any development density on the remaining parcel.
Is there battery storage on that site?
No. It's connected right into the grid, no batteries.
So there's no concern that for housing being built nearby?
No, there has been no, even battery storage, I don't want to get off tangent, but that was one company that was a bad egg in Warwick that has now taken something that is maybe the only thing that's a dire need as housing, which is energy storage to be able to provide alternative energy, but God willing, sodium or another type of energy source. But solar, there's no issues associated with just solar compared to battery energy storage.
Do you expect any commercial usage on this property?
There's a little area of it that was reserved of the zoning.
Yeah, the AB zone includes a portion, I'm sorry, the AB zone is the majority of the parcel, but there's a small strip of the parcel, actually along the former railroad right of way, which was zone DC, which I believe is for downtown commercial. And that is a narrow strip that runs parallel with where the former railroad was, that's now going to be the Sunnymore Trail. I'm assuming you're all familiar with the property. I mean, if you're coming down Route 208 towards the village, it begins at Woodcock Mountain Road and extends down over the hill right down to the veterinarian's office. So that's the parcel, and the narrow strip along where the veterinarian's office is now in Fulton Square, that's now currently zoned downtown commercial, DC. The rest of the parcel is AB.
So you wouldn't be looking to, within the definition of a PUD, there would be some commercial use within that PUD.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
possibly
there
could
could
be
be, yeah.
incorporated into the language that the village comes up with for the planned development, which would allow some kind of neighborhood commercial.
And it would, once again, be up to the village that you would determine how much you would want to before you start competing with your core downtown area, which I'm sure, you know, you want to thrive.
Does the board have any preliminary site plans or any renderings, any conceptual?
We had a couple conceptual, I don't know if it was submitted to the planning board, because, you know, my only concern is, like as James said, he's not the developer. We would like to come into concepts. What we presented and can give to you is for illustrative purposes, but it's not something to say, this is what we're proposing to build, or what we think is best, or the only thing that we could live with. It could just show you, you know, the type of mixes that could occur. We could rejigger it however, you know, we want to, but the unfortunate part here is if you wait until you have a developer who has something specific, then start the process without some indication where then you're just years down the line and no developer will come. So they're gonna want to at least know, to get any responsible developer to come here and consider it, they're gonna at least wanna know there's a starting point and a basis to be able to come.
Yeah, like John said, we're not proposing any specific development. The village had asked us, while we were working both with the comprehensive plan and with the comprehensive committee and with the with the village board, as what do we have in mind? So we had our engineer draft kind of just a very generic development plan that would show some single-family homes, some condominiums, and some apartment. But it was just, you know, a preliminary number to show a potential. It wasn't presented as, well, we'd like to do this particular work, because we're not developers. The only thing I brought was a map of the boundary survey of the entire 150-acre parcel, which we had done back in '99. And it's just a base map showing the two parcels which are adjacent to each other, the Meringham parcel and the Ossipek parcel. But we have no specific plan to present. What we want to work on is a concept for plan development that would allow us to have someone who's interested in it actually develop a plan that could then be presented to you for approval, as long as it complies with the planned unit development concept that the village hopefully will adopt.
And so how many buildable acres?
Of the entire 150 acres, much of it is in either a wetland or a floodplain.
Right.
So we have approximately 60 acres that's going to be developable. Unfortunately, about 55% of that has been subject to, or made subject to, a scenic overview, which means it's totally undevelopable, because it cannot have any buildings taller than 10 feet, so that means you really can't have any buildings. So obviously that needs to be addressed as well when the planned development concept is worked on by the village. And there are ways to preserve a scenic view without using 55% of the buildable land on the parcel.
I'm sorry, was that 55% or 55 of the 60?
No, 55, about 55%, about 30 acres,
Okay.
32 acres is subject to the scenic overlay.
So,
You know, that's my estimate from knowing the size of the various fields that we worked agriculturally. I didn't have a surveyor go in and actually map it out, but that's.
So that's fine, that's just 55 out of 60 versus 55.
No, 55%.
Yeah, all right.
so,
55% of the 60.
Of the 60.
so just to give you a picture then, you know, of this acreage, of this parcel, even with the planned unit development, given the lot coverage requirements of development of that 60 acres is gonna provide some open space, plus you're gonna have, what's 150? You're gonna have a significant number of acreage that is going to be undisturbed just because it's wetland. So a lot of that business, so this is not gonna be a huge development in any way, shape, or form. It's just gonna be something that, you know, allows in the 60 acres, a mix in. What I see in my experience in, development around the region for the last 35 years is, we try to talk PUD, but what ends up happening is you either have large lot, single family, or apartment complexes, or maybe, townhouses, but there are very few that are really a mix where you can go drive into a property and have smaller, and 8,000 square foot lots are probably what many of many people grew up in and were just fine with. You could have a backyard, raise a family, a 3, maybe 4-bedroom home, but it's not one of the, McMansions, and also have a few apartments and, maybe a few townhouses or duplex units to provide a neighborhood,
I know
a small neighborhood.
You mentioned R10, but R10 is showing a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet.
Right, yeah, I mean, in the PUD, I would hope we would get some, relief on that. That doesn't mean you're gonna build at a density of 8,000, but I mean, you could put maybe on a lot, and I'm pulling 8,000, 7,000, 8,000, you could put the home on that and leave portions for open space, but that's.
And when you were mentioning the 60 acres before, were you also thinking the setback from the roadways also? And that's
No, we have to all of that, the 60 acres would be the development portion. Now, part of the front yard, when you lay it out, may be wetlands and not developable area, but good to
Right.
call your front yard. You may not be able to use it for density formula, but you may be able to use it for the, 20-foot. So all of that is up, for discussions on how to lay out. And, I don't, does Bonnie Francis, do you still have a planning consultant working with you? Or, so she's very familiar with the concepts of, PUD, and, I've worked with Bonnie personally and her firm, for too many years to mention now, so, it's, we'd be happy to, to work with her, and I'm confident that, with a little give and take on both sides, we can come up with something, I think, that would be a very attractive and reasonable development options for this parcel.
Any other questions?
Do you envision these units to be owned or rented? Or the units
That's
to be
another
rented?
thing, I'd imagine, like, in a planned unit development, there's usually the single family, the person owns the lot. Some of the townhouses, it could be, in condominium ownership, and then there's an overall HOA that has rules that would set the, the whole, community as to keeping the roads could be private, the roads could be village road, that's all, up for discussions, but, at least for the single family homes, they would be owned, and, any detached, I think duplexes is something that would be a great opportunity around here that you don't see, that you see in other parts of the country, or just 2-family homes where, someone lives on the first floor, rents out, second floor, rents out part of it, and is able to finance their mortgage with the rent that they have, and they're usually owner occupied, or, something that they'll be maintained well. So we're open to all those concepts, it goes in phases, all right? I know right now for multifamily rentals, because a lot of people don't want to own, and rents are too damn high to quote the other one, but it's the other thing with density. When you have a little bit of density there, you can designate some of the units, at least a percentage of them, that would maintain, some level of affordability, to be able to provide some veterans or seniors or workforce housing as well. All of that, as I said, is on the table. You see a lot of the PUDs will have a percentage set aside for affordable that aren't counted against density, which you can all do if you have central water, central sewer, and those types of amenities. It gives you more flexibility to really design it in a manner that can accommodate various needs of the community, not just one particular subset.
Just to confirm, there is water and sewer, because I've been in there are several meetings where it's been, yes, it is, no, it isn't, so.
No,
just-
there's village water main all the way down Route 208, almost to Woodcock Mountain Road. In fact, I watched them install it because they upgraded it to a larger one probably a decade ago. They asked permission to dig up the corner of my field to put in that water line. And there's sewer capacity right at the rear of the property that was actually put in there by Levitt Homes probably in 1970. And Levitt Homes was under contract to buy from the former owner. And so there's a sewer line that runs from about the middle of our property over to and connects into the village system. So we have both water and sewer capacity.
Just for my own curiosity, do you have internet connections and stuff like that? Do you know?
Pardon me?
Do you have internet connections and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, there's phone lines, and there's also, Spectrum has a fiber optic cable that runs down along Route 208.
Okay.
My brother-in-law's house, which is 19 South Street, has a fiber optic Spectrum internet connection, which works a whole lot better than the Frontier wire one that
You're
I
right,
have at my
you're
house.
right. I agree with that.
You got down that driveway?
Yeah, they did.
Would you consider doing larger lots instead of the R10?
It depends on sitting down, it will be up to James, and larger depends on what larger is and what we could work out, but I would say, and Bonnie might have input, from a ecological perspective, I know it seems it, but larger lots are not more ecologically, friendly. And if there was larger lots in this market, James, with water and sewer, probably could do larger lots and build bigger homes and sell it to people who will come from the city and, live here. And God bless people who come from the city. I'm nothing against, them, but, it's probably not gonna meet the housing need that we have in this, community. It might meet the economic needs of James' family, so I'm not gonna put it off the table if that's what, you're willing to, to live with. But when you have water and sewer available,
And I'd like to address that as well, that the former zoning on this parcel was RA, Residence Agriculture, and that required 1 acre minimum lot size. But that zoning was applied before there was a village sewer system. And because it continued to operate as a dairy farm, there was no need to address the size of a potential residential lot. When I spoke to our engineer about, coming up with some conceptual plans, I suggested to him that along Woodcock Mountain Road, those lots could be a little bit larger to match the larger lots that are on the opposite side of Woodcock Mountain Road. And so you would have, you wouldn't have a sharp line there going from larger lots to smaller lots. You could start the parcel off with some large lots and then gradually reduce the size so that it formed a community, but yet was contiguous with what's going on the other side of both Woodcock Mountain Road and Route 208. I mean, I don't think the lots out there are really, really large. I'm not sure they're a full acre. I know the ones on 208 aren't, that are opposite the property. Those are relatively small lots. But yes, that's a concept that could be addressed as well with the planned development concept.
Just a question, it's probably not really practical to answer at this point without a site plan, but is there anything that's jumping out at you that you would think would, that you would anticipate, like variances, and the need for any variances, bulk variances, or, obviously it's gonna depend on what the plan looks like, but is there anything that you've already noticed?
No, because right now,
Yeah.
we need a variance from, everything, because there's a 10-foot height restriction, and, the only housing is veterans, just veterans or just seniors, so we would hope to accommodate something that, probably if it was R10, single-family housing, we probably could develop lots that wouldn't need, variances. I personally think that, some flexibility, but when you say R10, would probably be something that, you could live with, but, your plan says some type of mix, and I think it would, by giving some relief, it would allow you to not only have R10, but to provide some set aside, but not just a veterans housing development, but some units that would be, offered as rentals. And to do that, you can't do that on larger lots.
The parcel is laid out so that the areas that are either in the wetland or in the floodplain are off to one side. So the portion that's developable that runs from Woodcock Mountain Road down to the former railroad right of way, I can't envision why there would be a need for any variances on that.
That's
That's
you
all,
have
yeah.
some sense of what what the layout is,
Yeah.
would jump off the page,
We needed no variances for the solar array, for example. I mean, the village adopted a code to provide for what solar had to do, and it fit the property perfectly. We didn't need to have any variances. And the interesting thing about it is most people don't know there's a solar array there. There's a 2-megawatt solar array that's been now in operation for, I believe, this is the 4th year that it's been in operation, and it was under construction for 2 years prior to that. And the first thing that anybody realized that was going on is when they came to actually install the array, they put a little sign warning a construction entrance at 23 South Street, and that's the only thing people ever realized. They had no idea what was being built, they don't know it's there, they don't see it. You really can't see it. You can drive all around the property on Woodcock Mountain Road, on 208, on Depot Street, you can't see it. It's tucked in the back there, which is one of the reasons why it was a perfect spot for it.
You can barely see it when you're on the rail trail.
Yeah, if you're on the rail trail, you can see it, but very
That's
few
not
cars
bad.
drive there. But if you hike along the rail trail, yes, you can see it. And it's the rail trail that kind of prevents people from seeing, if you're at Mays Field, you don't see it, because the raised roadbed of the old railroad acts as a block. You don't even see it that way. You have to climb up on the old railroad bed to be able to see it. We've owned this property now, like I said, my father-in-law operated, it's a dairy farm from the 1950s. We've owned it since 1980, which is 45 years or so. We're community members. My wife was born and raised here in Washingtonville. She's the founder of Washingtonville Pediatrics. I had my law office here for many years before I retired. We live in Blooming Grove. We're not that far away. We've always lived in Blooming Grove, right on Todd Hill Road. We have great concern for the village of Washingtonville. We care what it looks like. We care how it gets developed. And that's why we turned down some parcels, some parties that approached us when it was for sale, because we weren't interested in what they were going to do. We would be more than happy to work with the village to come up with a plan for a planned development that allows a development that blends with the rest of the village. And we're concerned about that. We're residents here, and we've been residents for a long time.
I appreciate that statement.
If we were 20 years younger, maybe we'd develop it ourselves, but I'm getting a little old for that.
Any additional statements? comments, or anything?
No, I just would, I know trustee Giarrusso is here. I don't know if you want us to come back, if there's any additional information you want, should we go to the village? I mean, and I don't need an answer tonight, but just if we can hear if there's willingness, because I do want to advise the attorney who is representing you on the litigation to provide them more time if we're at least progressing to, work something out. I don't want to spend our time and energy,
If you're asking me, I think it would be helpful, since just over half the board is here, the chair is not present. They can have an opportunity maybe to process
Sure.
what was heard tonight,
Yeah.
review it,
I agree with that, Donna.
Yeah.
We should have.
and let the others, they can maybe have a work session or however they choose to review.
Back in February, or?
They have a scheduled meeting monthly,
Okay.
but they only meet on a need-be basis if there's a meeting on the agenda, unless they're using it for training purposes.
Okay, and if you can let me know, I just, if there's any way, if the ZBA to meet, the second Tuesday is a little bit tough for me, because I have someone covering me for me tonight, but I do represent a board that meets on the second Tuesdays, that, if there's a way.
So the zoning board meetings are scheduled for the first Thursday of every month. I guess they could potentially use that date.
Yeah, and you don't have to decide it. And
Council, does that-